In a small village surrounded by lush trees and colorful flowers lived a woman known for her kindness and patience. Mrs. Amália, as she was called, resided on a modest farm teeming with life. Animals of various kinds shared the space, each receiving her special care. Yet there was one that held a unique place in her heart, a donkey named Timothy, affectionately nicknamed Tim. Timothy arrived at the farm as a frail and helpless foal. Mrs. Amália took him in with a love that surpassed understanding. She fed him the finest grains, brushed his coat until it gleamed in the sunlight, and even sang to soothe him on cold nights. Under her care, Timothy grew strong and healthy, becoming a robust and energetic donkey. Over the years, however, Timothy grew vain and stubborn. Perhaps because he had always been pampered, he began to believe he was the king of the farm. He refused to obey, played pranks, and sometimes caused trouble for Mrs. Amália. Yet, she remained patient, trying to teach him the importance of respect and responsibility. One day, while Mrs. Amália was busy tending to other animals, Timothy took the chance to nudge the gate open with his snout and escape. Feeling free, he ran through the fields, braying with joy. In that moment, he believed that limitless freedom was all he needed. But as life often teaches, that euphoria soon gave way to new challenges. While exploring, Timothy came across a distant farm. The environment was different, busy, noisy, and ruled by a stern farmer, known for his lack of patience. When Timothy tried to join the other animals to eat, he realized things would be nothing like they were at Mrs. Amália's farm. The other donkeys, hardened by their tough lives, shoved him away from the feed trough. The farmer, irritated by the commotion, laid down a strict rule: if you want food, you'll have to work. For the first time, Timothy experienced the harshness of life without Mrs. Amália's love and care. He carried heavy sacks, pulled plows under the scorching sun, and hauled water without rest. His back ached, his hooves were sore, and the meager food he received barely satisfied his hunger. Nights were lonely, without Mrs. Amália's soothing songs or the warmth of the barn. Timothy reflected on his choices. The pride that had kept him from admitting his mistakes began to give way to regret. He remembered Mrs. Amália's patience, her unconditional affection, and how she had never raised a hand against him, even in his most stubborn moments. Meanwhile, Mrs. Amália was also suffering. Determined to find her donkey, she traveled to neighboring villages, asked farmers, and even offered a reward for any news of Timothy. She sold everything she had: furniture, tools, and even the few animals left on her farm. Each day, her home grew emptier, but her heart remained full of hope. "If anyone finds my donkey, tell him I'm waiting with open arms," she said with a trembling voice, holding a picture of Timothy. Months passed. Exhausted and starving, Timothy finally realized that the freedom he sought was an illusion. True happiness lay in the love and care he had always received from Mrs. Amália. Resolving to make amends, he began the long journey back. The road was difficult, but longing and remorse drove him forward. Everywhere he went, he asked about Mrs. Amália. He heard stories of how she had sacrificed everything to search for him, which only deepened his sorrow. At last, he reached the farm, but something was different. The silence was overwhelming. The house was shuttered, and the fields seemed abandoned. Timothy called out for Mrs. Amália, but no one answered. He wandered every corner, looking for signs of life, until he found a small grave in the garden. The wooden cross bore a simple inscription: "Here rests Mrs. Amália, who loved all beings with patience and kindness. Timothy's world crumbled. He fell to his knees before the grave, tears streaming down his face. "Forgive me, my dear lady," he murmured. "My pride has separated us forever." All night, Timothy stayed by the grave, reliving every moment with Mrs. Amália. He felt her presence in every memory, as if her spirit were there comforting him. When the sun rose, Timothy made a decision. He would honor Mrs. Amália's memory by caring for the farm as she had done. He would transform his pain and regret into acts of kindness, keeping her legacy alive. Moved by Timothy's devotion, the neighbors began to help him. Gradually, the farm came back to life. Flowers bloomed in the garden again, and the fields became fertile. The story of Mrs. Amália and Timothy spread throughout the region as an example of love, patience, and redemption. This story teaches us that pride can lead us down paths of loneliness and regret, driving us away from those who love us most. But it also shows that it is never too late to seek forgiveness and transform our lives. The true value of a home lies in the love and dedication we share with those around us. May the legacy of Mrs. Amália and Timothy's transformation inspire us all to cultivate patience, cherish our bonds, and always seek the goodness within our hearts. And if this message has touched your heart in any way, take a moment to share it with someone who might need a spark of hope today. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring content. We'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment sharing a moment that changed your life or a story that shaped who you are. May God bless you abundantly, and we can't wait to see you in our next video.